Making the decision to get sober can be one of the most rewarding and fulfilling choices of your entire life. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, it doesn't mean it's an easy thing to accomplish. A lot of us have really legitimate reason to go ahead and put the drugs down, put the alcohol down. But we fall into certain traps when we try, or for whatever reason, despite good intentions, we end up not following through, and maybe we don't know why. Some of us have never tried, and if you're that person, or the person who's struggling to stay sober but feels that it's the best thing for you, I'm going to talk about some topics of early sobriety. Some things to look out for from my own experience. Now, I am not the guru of staying sober. I do have nearly 2 years at this point. I certainly have really good reason to be sober for my personal life. But I don't care if you're a drinker and you don't want to get sober. I wouldn't necessarily understand why you were here. But I'm not pro-sobriety, anti-drinking. I'm just pro people doing what's best for them. So you're welcome here no matter what walk of life you have. The reason I'm making this video is because I've had a ton of people reach out to me talking about their struggles in early sobriety. For all those people who might be watching who are struggling with sobriety, which can be a really tricky thing, as simple as it sounds, I hope you know that everyone who ever strung together some real time of sobriety, they all couldn't get sober until they finally did. And all that means is, just because you haven't been able to stay sober doesn't mean you won't be able to get sober if that's what's truly meant for you. Early sobriety in particular is a very confusing time. There's like this array of feelings and emotions, and it's not a universal experience. I will draw from mine and sort of shed light on some of the things I've seen, because I know a lot of people that are sober that used to be drinkers. One of the biggest things you have to be aware of in terms of buffering your common sense is that there's like a honeymoon phase of getting sober. Maybe you had a bad bender and you did some stupid shit when you were drunk, or maybe you just have a criminal personality that comes out when you drink, or you're about to lose a job, you're about to lose a relationship. Maybe the chips stacked up on you, so it was time to cash out, or your life was going to fall apart. And after you make that decision, there's this weird reward system in the brain that just congratulates you, and it makes you feel really, really good for a while. That honeymoon phase, that pink cloud, it's going to end. And if you prepare for that fact, if you know it's coming, it'll help you sort of acclimate and adjust to life being sober a little bit easier. It's not going to be like rainbows and butterflies the entire time. There's a lot of hard work to be done in sobriety. I mean, for a lot of us, it's a lot more complicated than, oh, this happens when I drink, I should stop. A lot of it's up here. Why you drink is between you and your God, but I've worked hard to learn why I was drinking, and it was a lot more than just the alcohol and how much I loved it. I was dealing with some shit with alcohol, personally, and maybe you are too. So just be aware that that shit's gonna come up when your honeymoon phase more than likely ends. Another common problem a lot of people fall into that write me is that they say that they don't want to drink anymore, but they also don't want to give up their friends, and they don't want to give up the general lifestyle they were living. But as a lot of you have found out, and a lot more are soon to find out if you go down this road, staying in the exact same world that you were in when you were drinking or using drugs is really tough to do when you're sober. You'll pretty much just make yourself miserable. You'll find yourself being pretty perturbed by people that are drinking in general and or using drugs. They get a lot more annoying when you can't actually be in that same place. And if anything, it creates an itch in you that most of us are going to have to eventually scratch if we stay in that toxic environment. And make no mistake about it, if you're trying to get sober, but you're hanging out with people that are constantly drinking or using, that is a toxic environment for your newfound goal. You have to make new friends, or at least you have to spend time with those friends in a different capacity. And you might find it's a lot harder to connect with them without that social lubricant that maybe bonded you to begin with. It's not impossible. I've kept some really good friends in sobriety, but I've also lost a handful more. That meant I also couldn't go to bars like I was just saying. I just don't. I had enough trial and error trying to get sober to realize that that wasn't going to work for me. So for me, common sense is to assume that I can't really be around that stuff anymore. At least not right away. Maybe down the road. But early sobriety, you need to protect yourself. You need to be in environments that are not conducive to drinking or using drugs, or you probably are going to fail. Another thing I think everyone needs to be aware of, and people message me all the time, and I try to explain this to them as respectfully as I can. When you drink and ingest alcohol, you're flooding your brain with dopamine. That's what happens when you drink it. It tells your brain to produce lots of dopamine, and that feels fantastic when you're drinking. And when you first stop drinking, your brain is sort of used to getting that signal to make extra dopamine, and so you feel fine. A lot of it correlates to that whole honeymoon phase or the pink cloud I was talking about. But eventually, most of us are going to have a real big dip in mood that just makes us feel depressed. So just understand that that's coming and that it will get better once your mind has a chance to recalibrate. A lot of people they don't know how to deal with the fact that suddenly they feel down or a bit anxious. Maybe you've been drinking for years and now your brain chemistry is for sure out of whack, and you're going to kind of have a bit of like a rough patch, and it's just something that sends a lot of people back out drinking because they just can't stomach it. They can't get through it, which sort of brings me to my next little bit of common sense. You're going to need a new outlet. I've said this in videos before, but it really bears repeating. If drinking or using drugs was a huge part of your life and then you just strip it away, you have to fill that void with something, and hopefully you can fill it with something that's not equally as damning, or something that might be positive, would obviously be beneficial or preferential. So you need to find a new outlet, and you need to take that really, really serious. If you drank even a couple times a week, that was a big part of your routine. What are you going to do instead? So for me, I ended up diving into 12-step programs and exercise, and I started to take a bigger interest in school, and I started to take a bigger interest in other hobbies. But I had to do something, because in the past, when I just stopped drinking, eventually it made me feel so depressed and shitty and so bored that I eventually went back to drinking, because I just didn't know what to do with myself. So I really had to make a concerted effort to figure out how I was going to replace what was a very big part of my life at the time. There's a loneliness that comes with early sobriety for a lot of people if you do it on your own. Even for people that don't want to make new friends, or even for people that want to still be in environments that are full of it, or maybe you don't have much of a choice about your environment. Maybe you're in an environment where that's just around. You can find yourself feeling pretty lonely, and you might need support. Now, I'm not trying to push this down your throat, but I'm just telling you like it's been for me. I tried to do it my way and on my own for a long time in early sobriety, and I didn't have any guidance, and I didn't have anything to help steer me the right way. And so I always ended up relapsing. I'm a chronic relapser until this last round. It's the longest I've ever stayed sober, and I would say definitively the most beneficial change I made this time was admitting that I needed help and support. Like, I wasn't going to be able to just do it on my own, which was okay. It was fine. There's tons of people like us. We just aren't meant to just get sober and then do nothing. We need support. So for me, that was 12-step programs. But if that's not for you, find some kind of support system that can sort of just usher you through this. It's a pretty interesting experience to get sober if you've never done it before. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of feelings. There are a lot of situations that come up that if you can follow the lead of people that have successfully done it before you, it's going to make it a lot easier. And that sort of ties also into filling that void and adding something positive to replace what will likely be a gaping hole in your life if drugs and alcohol were a big part of your life, and or something that got you into a whole lot of trouble. So, I also might suggest that you don't keep alcohol or drugs in your house if you have control over that aspect of your life, just to eliminate that temptation. And that temptation does go away with time. The itch definitely eventually goes away. I can't tell you how long that'll take, but it does get better. It does get easier. So I've already talked a lot. I could go on with some other things, and maybe eventually I'll do a part 2, but those are some of the main topics I wanted to talk about for early sobriety. I don't have all the answers for you, but I certainly encourage you in your journey. If this is something you feel like you want to do, I would never go back, personally. It's been worth the hell that I've gone through trying to get sober and stay sober to be here. Where I was, I couldn't stay any longer, and I made that decision, and I couldn't look myself in the mirror and lie about it anymore. I knew I had to do something, and I was willing to do anything. So some of the things I mentioned might help you, but I hope you go out and seek more support and talk to more people, get more information, and give yourself a fair shake at this if it's important to you. It could change your life forever, and you deserve that chance if that's what you need. My name is Noah. Thank you so much for your time. The lifeblood of this channel is not me flapping my lips. It's you guys sharing in the comments below. Beyond the fact that it immensely helps me to hear your guys' perspectives and insights and experiences, it really helps other people who want to scroll through and just get some added info. So please share other common sense tips when it comes to early sobriety, other experiences with sobriety, or just whatever is on your mind. I read all the comments. I try to respond to as many as I can, and other people benefit from you. You guys are amazing, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.